The rain had not stopped for 3 days. It came down in slow, heavy sheets, the kind that blurred the world into smudges of gray and blue. For most, it was just another storm. But for Daniel Reed, it was a baptism, a cleansing of everything that had once been soft inside him. 3 days ago, his daughter, Lily, had been found in a shallow ditch outside the edge of town. The sheriff had called it a tragedy. Daniel called it a beginning. He hadn't spoken much since that night. Not to his neighbors who came with flowers, not to the priest who murmured prayers over her small, still body, not even to the detectives who promised to do everything they could. He knew the look in their eyes, the weary acceptance, the quiet resignation that small-town murders rarely found justice. But Daniel wasn't like them. He wasn't built to wait for justice. He was going to drag it out into the light himself, even if he had to go through hell to find it. The first place he went was Lily's room. It still smelled like her, vanilla shampoo and paper, the faint trace of lavender from the candle she always lit while studying. On her desk, he found her sketchbook, open to a half-finished drawing of the river. He remembered that she used to go there often to read and draw when she needed to think. It was where she'd been the night she didn't come home. The police said they'd checked it. He knew they hadn't looked hard enough. That night, he drove out there himself. The rain made the dirt road into sludge, but he didn't care. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, dancing over the reeds and trees that bordered the riverbank. He found cigarette butts, crushed beer cans, footprints half washed away by the rain. But one thing caught his eye, a charm bracelet, half buried in the mud. It was Lily's. She never took it off. His breath caught in his throat. Someone had been here with her. Daniel took it to the sheriff's office the next morning. Sheriff Mullen looked at it with a frown, then sighed. "We'll have the lab look at it," he said, sliding it into a plastic bag. But Daniel saw it, the small shake of the head, the quiet tone that said this won't change much. It was then that Daniel understood something vital. The law wasn't going to find his daughter's killer. He was going to have to do it himself. He started with questions. He talked to Lily's friends, to the boy who worked at the gas station, to the bartender who always saw too much and said too little. Most didn't want to talk. Some pitied him. But one night, a mechanic named Cole let something slip. He said he'd seen a black pickup parked near the river the night Lily went missing. A man got out, someone he didn't recognize. Big, tall, wearing a brown leather jacket. The kind you don't forget. Daniel spent the next week driving around town, looking for that truck. Every alley, every parking lot, every back road. He started sleeping in his car. He stopped shaving, stopped eating. The obsession became his oxygen. And then, one night, he found it. The black truck, parked outside an old warehouse near the industrial district. He sat there for hours, watching. A man came out eventually, tall and broad, lighting a cigarette under the awning. The brown leather jacket, the glint of a silver ring on his hand. Daniel recognized that ring. He'd seen it once before in a photo on Lily's phone, one of the men who hung around the bar she'd gone to with her friends the week before she died. Rage flared inside him, hot and sharp. He followed the man when he left, careful to keep his distance. The man drove out to a small house on the outskirts of town, lights off, no neighbors for miles. Daniel parked down the road and waited, his fingers trembling against the steering wheel. He thought about Lily's laugh, the way she'd run into his arms when she was little, her hair always smelling like sunshine and soap. He thought about how he'd failed her. And then, as the rain began again, he made a vow to make the man inside that house feel every ounce of the pain he'd caused. The first time Daniel confronted him, it wasn't with words. It was with a fist. He broke into the house after midnight, the creak of the door drowned out by the storm. The man woke up just as Daniel grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. There was fear in his eyes, confusion, denial. But when Daniel held up the bracelet, that fear turned into something else. Recognition. "You were there," Daniel said, his voice shaking. "You were there when she died." The man stammered, tried to explain, said it wasn't what he thought. Said he hadn't meant to. But Daniel didn't want explanations. He wanted truth. The man confessed eventually, between sobs and blood. He hadn't meant to kill her, he said. They'd been drinking by the river. Things got out of hand. She'd fallen, hit her head. He'd panicked, buried her in the ditch. Daniel didn't remember much after that. Just flashes. The man on the floor, his own hands slick with blood, the sound of thunder swallowing the screams. When it was done, he walked out into the rain, breathing hard, trembling, the bracelet clutched in his fist. The police found the body the next morning, beaten and left in his own yard. They never proved Daniel did it. There wasn't enough evidence. The sheriff asked him once, years later, if he'd found peace. Daniel just looked at him and said nothing. He still visits Lily's grave every Sunday. He talks to her softly about the weather, about how the roses are blooming again. He never speaks of that night. But sometimes, when the rain begins to fall, he stands there a little longer, eyes closed, face lifted to the sky, as if waiting for forgiveness that will never come. Months passed, but time did not dull the ache. It only buried it deeper, like a wound that refused to heal beneath the skin. Daniel Reed tried to return to what others called life, to mornings with coffee, to fixing cars at his garage, to polite nods with neighbors who avoided his eyes, but everything had turned into an imitation. The laughter on the radio, the smell of engine oil, even the hum of the fluorescent lights, all of it sounded hollow now. His world had become a silent room with a single echo, Lily's voice, laughing in memory, fading in guilt. He told himself he had done what was right, that it was justice. But justice had a cruel way of twisting itself into something darker when you took it into your own hands. Some nights, he dreamed of her face as a child, her small hand gripping his thumb, her eyes wide with wonder when he used to show her how to fix things in the garage. Then, just as suddenly, the dream would shift. Her eyes would grow cold, her lips blue, her skin pale under the rain. He'd wake up choking on her name, his pillow wet with tears he refused to admit were his. Word spread quietly through town, as rumors always do. People said the man in the leather jacket had gotten what he deserved. Some whispered that Daniel had done it, though no one dared say it to his face. The sheriff stopped asking questions, and the case was marked closed. But every time Daniel walked down Main Street, he could feel the stares, the pitying looks from the old ladies outside the diner, the cautious glances from the deputies. He carried their silence like another kind of punishment. Then one day, a stranger came to town. He was young, mid-30s, clean-cut, the kind of man who didn't belong in a place that had more ghosts than living souls. He came into Daniel's garage one afternoon, his car rattling from the road. He said his name was Carter, that he'd just moved into the next county. He smiled easily, talked about engines and the weather. Daniel didn't pay much attention until the man mentioned, too casually, that he used to work with the state police. The wrench slipped from Daniel's hand, clattering to the floor. He looked at Carter, then really looked. The man's eyes weren't casual, they were sharp, assessing. Watching him. That night, Daniel sat on his porch with his cigarette burning down to the filter, rain starting to fall again. He could feel the unease creeping back in, that old, gnawing paranoia. He knew it was only a matter of time before someone started asking questions again. The man he'd killed had friends, bad ones, the kind who didn't forgive or forget. 2 nights later, his fear proved right. He woke to the sound of gravel crunching outside his cabin. A car door slammed, followed by muffled voices. He moved quietly to the window, peering out into the rain. 2 men stood near the edge of the driveway, flashlights cutting across the dark. Not police. Not locals. One of them wore a leather jacket, old and cracked, much like the one Daniel remembered. His stomach turned cold. He grabbed the pistol from the drawer, a relic from his years in the army, one he hadn't touched since that night. The memories came rushing back like a flood. He couldn't stop. The fight, the blood, the storm. He clenched the gun tighter. He'd made a vow once, to protect his daughter, even if he couldn't save her. And now, it seemed, that vow wasn't done demanding its price. When the men came closer, Daniel stepped outside into the rain. His voice was calm, steady as he called out, "Looking for something?" The flashlights swung toward him. One of the men smirked. "You Daniel Reed?" "Depends who's asking." The man with the jacket took a step forward. "You killed my brother." Silence hung in the air, heavy as thunder. Daniel didn't answer. The truth sat between them like a loaded gun. What happened next wasn't quick. The fight was brutal, clumsy, desperate. Daniel was outnumbered, outmatched, but he fought like a man who'd already lost everything. The shots echoed across the valley, mixing with the storm. When it was over, two bodies lay in the mud. One still breathing, one not. Daniel stumbled back into his house, blood on his shirt, shaking. He stared at his reflection in the cracked mirror. He didn't recognize the man staring back, a stranger with hollow eyes and trembling hands. For a long time, he just stood there, until the tears finally came, hot and silent. By morning, he was gone. The sheriff found the cabin empty, the truck missing, a note left on the kitchen table. It was written in Daniel's rough handwriting, the paper smudged with rain. "I kept my promise, Lily. I did what a father's supposed to do. I hope wherever you are, you can forgive me. I'm coming home soon." Weeks later, hikers found the truck deep in the woods, by the old river. The driver's seat was empty, door open, the bracelet still hanging from the rearview mirror. The current had long since carried away any sign of him. And though no one ever said it out loud, everyone in town knew. Daniel Reed had finally gone to be with his daughter. But on nights when the rain falls hard, the river still whispers. Locals say if you listen closely, you can hear a man's voice calling softly through the storm. Not in anger, not in pain, just a father, keeping his vow, even beyond the grave.